Hindustan Copper has surprised everyone again. I'm talking about an absolutely insane 43% rally in just September alone. Can you believe that? 43% in a single month. Now here's the million-dollar question I want you to think about. Is this just another short-term rally that's going to fizzle out like we've seen so many times before, or are we witnessing the beginning of something much bigger? A genuine long-term growth story that could change everything for Indian investors. Today, we're going to dive deep into everything that's happening with Hindustan Copper. We'll talk about why the stock jumped 6% in a single day, what's going on globally with copper markets, and most importantly, whether this rally has real legs or if it's just market hype. By the end of this video, you'll have complete clarity on whether Hindustan Copper deserves a spot in your portfolio or if you should stay away. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's break this down step by step. Recent stock rally. Let me paint you a picture of what's been happening with Hindustan Copper's stock price. In September 2025 alone, this stock has absolutely rocketed 43% higher. We're talking about the stock trading near its 52-week high of rupees 353, which it touched back in October 2024. But here's what makes this rally even more impressive. It's happening with massive volumes. Around 26 lakh shares are changing hands compared to just 11 lakh on average. When you see volume like this, it tells you that big players are getting involved, not just retail investors jumping on a trend. Now, why is this happening? The main reason is simple. Global copper prices are going through the roof. When copper prices go up internationally, Hindustan Copper's stock price follows because they're in the business of mining and selling copper. Think of it this way. Imagine you own a mango farm, and suddenly the price of mangoes doubles in the market. Your farm becomes much more valuable overnight, right? That's exactly what's happening here. Hindustan Copper owns copper mines, and copper has become incredibly valuable. The stock has been on a winning streak for 5 consecutive days, gaining nearly 18% in just those 5 sessions. This isn't just a one-day wonder. There's sustained buying pressure from both institutional and retail investors. What's really interesting is that this rally is happening when the broader market is actually quite volatile. While other stocks are struggling, Hindustan Copper is standing out like a bright star in the metals sector. Global copper story. Now let me tell you about the global drama that's driving copper prices crazy. There's this massive copper mine in Indonesia called Grasberg. And here's the kicker, it's the world's second largest copper mine. On September 8th, something terrible happened. There was a massive mud flow accident at this mine. Around 800,000 metric tons of mud rushed into the mining area. 2 workers tragically lost their lives and 5 others went missing. It's a heartbreaking situation. But from a market perspective, this accident has created chaos in global copper supplies. The mine operator, Freeport-McMoRan, immediately declared something called force majeure, which basically means they can't fulfill their copper supply contracts because of this unforeseeable disaster. Now here's why this matters so much for you as an investor. This single mine produces about 3% of the world's copper. When 3% of global supply suddenly disappears, prices shoot up everywhere. It's like if 3% of all the rice in the world suddenly became unavailable. Rice prices would skyrocket globally. Goldman Sachs, one of the world's biggest investment banks, immediately cut their copper supply forecasts. They're saying copper production will fall by about 250,000 tons in 2025 and by about 270,000 tons in 2026. These aren't small numbers. This represents millions of dollars worth of copper that won't be available in the market. The impact was immediate. Copper prices on the London Metal Exchange jumped to 15-month highs, touching $10,400 per metric ton. In Indian terms, that pushed copper futures to around 921 rupees on the MCX exchange. What makes this situation even more critical is that this mine isn't expected to return to full production until 2027. We're looking at potentially 3 years of reduced global copper supply. For copper-producing companies like Hindustan Copper, this is like winning the lottery. They can sell their copper at much higher prices for years to come. Company-specific updates. Let's talk about the specific developments at Hindustan Copper that have investors so excited. The biggest news is the 20-year extension of their Rakha mining lease. On September 19th, 2025, Hindustan Copper signed a deal with the District Commissioner of Jamshedpur to extend their mining lease for the Rakha copper mine by 20 years. Now, why is this such a big deal? Let me explain it in simple terms. Imagine you're renting a shop for your business, but you're not sure if the landlord will renew your lease next year. How much would you invest in improving that shop? Probably not much, right? But if the landlord gives you a 20-year lease guarantee, suddenly you're willing to invest heavily because you know you'll be there for the long term. That's exactly what this lease extension does for Hindustan Copper. It gives them the confidence to invest heavily in expanding and modernizing the Rakha mine, knowing they'll have 2 decades to recover their investments and generate profits. But the good news doesn't stop there. Let's look at their recent financial performance. In Q1 of financial year 2026, Hindustan Copper reported some impressive numbers. Their profit increased by more than 18% year-on-year to 134 crore rupees. Revenue also grew by about 5% to 516 crore rupees. Now, you might think 5% revenue growth isn't spectacular, but remember, this is happening in a challenging environment. The fact that they're growing both revenue and profit while expanding their operations shows strong management execution. Here's another interesting development. Hindustan Copper signed a memorandum of understanding with Oil India Limited to explore critical minerals together. This partnership isn't just about copper. They're looking at other valuable minerals too. It's like having 2 friends team up to search for treasure. They can cover more ground and share resources. These aren't just random positive developments. They show that Hindustan Copper is thinking strategically about the future, securing their resources, forming partnerships, and positioning themselves for long-term growth. Macro tailwinds. Now let's talk about the bigger picture, the massive trends that could drive Hindustan Copper's growth for years to come. The most important trend is the electric vehicle revolution that's happening in India and globally. Here's a fact that will blow your mind. Every electric vehicle uses 4 times more copper than a traditional petrol or diesel car. A regular car uses about 23 kilograms of copper, but an electric car uses between 58 to 70 kilograms. Why does an EV need so much copper? It's simple. Copper is like the highway for electricity. Every wire, every motor, every battery component needs copper to function efficiently. Without copper, an electric vehicle simply cannot work. India's EV market is exploding right now. EV sales crossed 2 million units in 2024, which is a 24% jump from the previous year. But here's the exciting part. We're still in the very early stages. India's per capita copper consumption is less than half that of developed countries. As India develops, copper demand will naturally increase. But it's not just about cars. The renewable energy sector is another massive driver. When you install solar panels or wind turbines, you need tons of copper for all the wiring and electrical components. Solar installations require about 5.5 tons of copper for every megawatt of capacity. India has set a target to achieve 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030. To put this in perspective, that's going to require massive amounts of copper. We're talking about millions of tons. Here's where Hindustan Copper has a unique advantage. They're India's only vertically integrated copper producer. That means they don't just mine copper ore. They also process it, refine it, and turn it into finished copper products. It's like owning the entire pizza business, from growing tomatoes to delivering the final pizza to customers. This vertical integration means they can capture value at every step of the process, making them much more profitable than companies that only do mining or only do processing. Competition. But here's the twist. Hindustan Copper isn't operating in a vacuum. Big players are entering the copper industry, and that includes giants like JSW Group. JSW has recently announced their plans to invest heavily in copper smelting. Their goal is to become one of the largest copper producers in India. Now, this raises an important question for investors like us. Will JSW's entry create stiff competition for Hindustan Copper? Or could it actually complement the industry? Here's how I see it. On one hand, JSW entering the space means more competition for market share. They have deep pockets, strong execution capabilities, and global experience. If they start aggressively, Hindustan Copper could feel the pressure, especially in refining and smelting. But on the other hand, let's not forget that India currently imports a huge amount of copper to meet its domestic demand. In financial year 2024, India imported about 3.5 lakh tons of copper. With demand set to skyrocket, there's actually room for multiple players. So rather than thinking of JSW as a threat, We could see them as part of India's broader effort to achieve self-sufficiency in copper. Hindustan Copper, with its strong mining base, could even benefit indirectly if India reduces its dependence on imports and builds more domestic capacity. Think of it like the smartphone market. When Apple, Samsung, and Xiaomi all compete, the market doesn't shrink. It actually grows faster because more people adopt smartphones. Similarly, more players in copper could mean faster adoption of renewable and EV infrastructure in India. India's mineral push. Now let's zoom out even further and look at India's national strategy. The government has made it clear that critical minerals like copper are essential for India's future growth and energy security. India is currently working on a critical mineral strategy that includes copper, lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements. The idea is to secure supply chains for industries like electric vehicles, renewable energy, and electronics. Hindustan Copper, being a public sector undertaking, is at the center of this strategy. The government has already indicated plans to expand domestic copper production. They don't want India to be overly dependent on imports, especially when global supply chains are becoming increasingly uncertain. For Hindustan Copper, this government backing is like having a powerful tailwind at their back. It means easier access to funding, faster clearances for projects, and potentially more partnerships with other state-owned or strategic companies. Add to this the Memorandum of Understanding with Oil India Limited. It's not just about copper anymore, they're exploring other critical minerals as well. So Hindustan Copper could transform from being a single commodity company into a broader critical minerals champion for India. This aligns perfectly with India's push towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, or self-reliant India. When you connect the dots, you see a clear picture forming. Hindustan Copper isn't just riding market trends. It's aligned with the government's long-term national goals. Of course, no story is complete without looking at the risks. Because let's be honest, every investment comes with its fair share of challenges. The first risk is commodity price volatility. Just like copper prices can go up sharply, they can also come down. If global copper prices cool off after this initial rally, Hindustan Copper's margins could be squeezed. We've seen this pattern before in commodities. Prices rise fast, but corrections also happen quickly. The second risk is operational. Hindustan Copper's mines are aging, and running mines efficiently in India can be challenging. Delays, rising costs, and environmental issues can slow down production. Even with the Rakha lease extension, execution risk always remains. Third, competition. While I earlier said JSW's entry could expand the market, it also means Hindustan Copper cannot afford to be complacent. They'll need to constantly improve efficiency and technology to stay competitive. And lastly, global uncertainties. Trade tensions, currency fluctuations, and global demand shifts can all impact copper prices and, in turn, Hindustan Copper's performance. So, while the growth story is strong, investors need to keep these risks in mind. It's never a straight line up in the stock market. Now, putting it all together, what does the future look like for Hindustan Copper? On the positive side, we have a global copper shortage that could last several years because of the Grasberg mine shutdown. We have strong domestic demand from electric vehicles and renewable energy. We have government support for critical minerals and a 20-year lease extension that gives the company long-term stability. On the company-specific side, profits are growing, partnerships are being formed, and expansion plans are in place. For long-term investors, these are the exact building blocks you want to see in a growth story. On the cautious side, we need to keep an eye on global copper price fluctuations and how efficiently Hindustan Copper executes its projects. So my take is this: Hindustan Copper is in a very strong position right now, but it's not a risk-free bet. It's a classic high-reward, high-risk play. If you believe in the long-term copper story, Hindustan Copper could be a solid addition to your portfolio. Conclusion. So to wrap it up, Hindustan Copper has delivered a jaw-dropping 43% rally in September 2025, driven by both global and domestic factors. The Grasberg mine accident has created a global supply crunch. Copper prices are at multi-month highs. Hindustan Copper has secured a 20-year mining lease extension. Profits are growing, and the EV and renewable energy revolutions are just getting started. On top of that, India's government is pushing hard to secure critical minerals. Hindustan Copper is right at the heart of that push. But let's not forget the risks. Commodity prices can be unpredictable, competition is heating up, and execution challenges always exist. As investors, the smart thing to do is to weigh both sides of the story. Don't get carried away by short-term rallies, but don't ignore the long-term structural changes happening in the copper industry either. At the end of the day, Hindustan Copper is no longer just another PSU stock. It's a potential game changer in India's journey towards self-reliance and green energy. Now the question is, are you ready to ride this copper wave, or will you stay on the sidelines and watch it pass by?